Christian parenting.
Welcome to Rocking It Grand with Chrys and Shellie. Rocking It Grand exists to remind us to live in the moment, even while planning for an amazing future. Let's keep our eyes open and see what today brings.
If you could use some godly parenting wisdom, encouragement, and inspiration, along with some fun, real-life stories, the Rocking It Grand podcast with Chrys and Shellie is for you. Hey friends, thanks for joining us again. This is Shellie Rushing Tomlinson, and I am here with my good friend Chris Howard, and we want to talk to you more today about life that's happening all around us and how we can draw lessons from the things that are right in front of our eyes. It's one of our favorite things to do.
That is kind of just what we do.
It is what we do.
That. Yeah.
So how are you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing good. I didn't know we were saying all three names today, so I'm going to say.
I know. The names came out because they're always on my books. And so
you put all three names. So I am Chrys and Shackelford Howard. So if anybody's out there listening.
Chrys and Shackelford Howard.
So I was so happy to trade Shackelford for Howard when I got married. But then I realized my mom didn't give me a middle name. My first name is Chrys Ann with no middle name. So then legally, I have to put that Shackelford in every thing where there's a middle name.
So that is long, Chrys and Shackelford Howard.
That is it.
Well, have I ever told you why I use Shellie Rushing Tomlinson?
No.
You've probably seen it on all my books, all my material.
Yeah.
When I first got into publishing, my first book came out in 2006. The first humor book, Suck Your Stomach In and Put Some Color On, was the name of that one.
Much.
And the subtitle was What Southern Mamas Tell Their Daughters the Rest of Y'all Should Know Too. And, we've laughed because the publisher that bought that book was in New York, and she said it was a very long title. And I said, well, it takes us a lot of words to say things sometimes in the South.
That's
we have
how we do.
A lot of things
to say. Why I don't have a middle name is my mom, who was from the South, was living in California at the time. And she said,
she had to go with brief.
A lot of her friends out there didn't do middle names. Like she's Betty Jo and Luther Neal. We're all, we've got those names. And so she just gave me and my older sister just the one name. I think she just thought she was being really California.
Wait, Jo Neal doesn't have a middle name either?
She doesn't.
Okay, well, see, I learned something new today. You're supposed to learn something new.
Then the other four. Yeah. Then it's, Jeremy Luther, Jessica Lynn.
Oh, they
all got them because Mom moved from California.
That's great. That's great. Well, I was digressed because I was going to tell you about the rushing. So anyway, back to...
but then another thing Southern people do is they tend to bring people things. And so I have gotten some of Shellie's fresh eggs from her fresh chickens, I guess. And then I've gotten some eggplant, but I'm not seeing a gift today.
Yeah, I didn't bring you garden gift, but wait. No. We digressed. I was going to finish telling you about Shellie Rushing Tomlinson and why that got in there. No, it was my fault. I like to say I digress from my digression. That's just the way I speak. So, but here's the deal. I am one of three girls, and my papa, that's my dad. We've always called him Papa, but he didn't have a son. And when I remember publishing that first book, and it was in honor to him because rushing wouldn't be carried on. He didn't have a son. So I wanted to put that in there. So there you go. That's the whole name thing. Why Shellie Rushing Tomlinson.
I love the we're kind of rambling here a second. I love the trend where people are using their maiden names for little boys' first names.
Oh, now that's cute.
So, one of your grandkids could be Rushing.
The
which
first
is kind
name.
of a cool name.
I should bring
but
that
you
up
might
at
be
a
done
family
with
council meeting.
grandkids.
I don't know.
That's right. They may not want any suggestions on new babies. Since you just had a new one not too long ago, and everybody else probably has declared themselves done.
Yes. So, I think they're saying they're done. We're done.
But that was a thought.
But the garden,
and back to the garden.
We don't even have to talk about my garden because my garden is sad right now. I think I had brought you the last thing from my garden. This starts happening around about this time every year. It just gets so hot and just the garden gives up.
It gets sad.
It gets sad and gives up. So you may have gotten your last eggplant. But hey, you brought us a story about gardening.
Yes. And speaking of that, about my mother growing up in Southern California, she did because my grandparents moved out there during the war effort. My mom was 12 when they moved out there. And so we went to see them. They stayed there until they retired. We left and moved on to Oklahoma at that time. But we'd go out to California to see them. And there's no place, yes, there are, but I'm being exaggerating, that can grow flowers when watered like Southern California.
Yeah.
Absolutely stunning, gorgeous flowers. Now, if you don't water it, you're in a desert.
Yeah.
It's a desert, but, when they water it. But Grandpa had the prettiest garden I can remember as a little kid. And we got to go back and see the house several years ago, but I was an adult, and it's always shocking. It was the tiniest
little house, and you thought it was a big house, right?
Oh, my word. We thought it was just huge and had the hugest big yard. And then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, well, even with my little 8-year-old long legs, about 3 cartwheels, and I was on the other side. But at the time, it didn't seem like it. But Grandpa would put this big old hedge, beautiful flowers all the way around that front yard, and you would do a cartwheel to the other side and sniff and smell and go back and sniff and smell.
I've had those experiences.
And it just brings back all those memories. And then Grandpa moved on to Natchitoches, Louisiana. We're all in Natchitoches. Shellie and I are in the northeast kind of corner, and Natchitoches is a little bit further south. And it's the oldest city in the Louisiana Purchase, and his family had been from that area, so they moved back there. And when Grandpa got there, and we started to go see him there, he did the same thing, built another little hedge
of flowers.
And this time he added sugar cane, because he grew up on a big sugar cane farm in Atlanta, Louisiana, and he wanted us grandkids to have the luxury of sugar cane, to go out there and just cut it off and be able to.
Oh, you're just bringing back such memories now, because my papa used to always bring us a stick of sugar cane. I don't know if a lot of our audience has ever chewed on sugar cane.
Probably haven't, but it's just the best thing to chew on. And so I thought about, what has that taught me about life? And what I think that teaches me is my grandfather was not living in a great time. It was during World War II. Mm-hmm. But he found a way to put a boundary around his family and give them some beauty when there wasn't beauty in other places.
Yeah, he created that.
And then when he moved to Natchitoches, he found another way to relate to his kids by forming a boundary. Yeah. And we sometimes think that we give boundaries a negative connotation. We do. Mm-hmm. But when you think about it, boundaries are so important. I mean, the first thing we do with a baby, we've got little babies in our family right now, and Shellie does as well. And the first thing you do is when you put them on a bed, is you put those pillows all around them and protect them. It's a boundary of protection. That
boundary is an act of love.
It is.
It's not
absolutely.
a bad thing.
And then as they get older, the boundary, widens out and that sort of thing. But I think about how God does that for us, how he has built in these boundaries that really give us purpose and meaning. And I've got a list of things that we're going to talk about that, but I love this verse. I just want to throw out a verse in Isaiah. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one and calls forth each one of them by name, because of the great power and mighty strength. Not one of them is missing. And so what I love about that is just that's like my grandpa, going out there and tending to that garden. God's done that for us. And it reminds us of the importance of boundaries.
And those boundaries, I thought you were going to read the passage. I love the one you read to us. I love the idea of God calling the stars out by name. I can just sit and think about that. I mean, forever. But I thought you we're going to go to the passage, and I've got my word here, and I could look it up while you're doing another one of our topics. But where it says that God tells the sea, the ocean, how far it can roam. Right. You're talking about a picture of a boundary that God said here and no further. This is how far you can go and no further. That is cool.
Love it so much. Mm-hmm. So I've got some things here that I've just kind of jotted down about why boundaries are important, because sometimes we begin to think, okay, well, maybe it's not that important. But the number one thing is that setting boundaries builds good character, and it helps our children make good choices. When they know how far they can safely go, it builds this inner sense of what is safe and not safe. Because, when you think about your kids being in the backyard, when they were little and you said, don't go out of the yard, that was for their safety. Now, you're not saying, think even back to the Garden of Eden. They had so many places they could have gone.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what a boundary does set up when you say, you have this entire yard.
Right.
Here, this is your boundary. So that gives them that safety and security.
That is very good. Okay, I'm going to do your second point. I love this about the power of boundaries. But first, let's go back to the word. Job 38:11 is what was on my mind. I'm going to read it from the NIV. It says, when I said, and God is speaking, this far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves must halt. That is some beautiful language about Creator God.
That's right.
Okay, boundaries. The second point on boundaries is that they put power and meaning to our words. So important. Ultimately, making our children feel confident in us as parents. We need that when we're training our children, when we're raising children and grandchildren. Few things are more harmful to a child's development than to say, if you do that again, this is going to happen. And then you hear a mom 2 seconds later say, if you do that again, this is going to happen.
That's right.
And by the time they've said it 3 or 4 times, I mean, this child knows that
whatever
that is not going to happen. It's not a boundary. It's not a firm boundary. And when they do not have a firm boundary from you, then they lose the ability to have confidence in anything else you're saying because, this didn't happen. And we want them to know that when we say what we say, E.F. Hutton, we want them to listen to us when we speak. So,
and that is a boundary in itself.
It gives them that
I never
confidence.
doubted, there were 6 kids in my family. I never doubted that my mother could handle us. I never did. I never had to go, oh, she's out of control.
Out of control,
no. My mother, when she said something, when she laid out a boundary, she meant
it. And it gave you confidence in your mom. And I can hear it even when you speak of her. And my mom was the same way. Yeah. And so that legacy lives.
Yeah. Her words had power. Not only that, her snap did. She could snap those fingers.
Absolutely. And hey, moms, look, just one eye. Just one eye was enough.
My mom had that thing. She can raise an eyebrow. I can't do that. I lost that in the mom tricks. She could raise that one eyebrow. When that eyebrow went up, all 6 of us were in a line.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
All right. Number 3, setting boundaries about the people our kids hang out with now teaches them to form their own boundaries about people in the future that will be in their life. And that could save them from a costly marriage mistake, employer mistake, those kind of things. Helping your children set those boundaries about who they are hanging out with. This is not a thing of being prejudiced against anybody or saying bad things or negative things about people, but making wise choices about who they let into their inner circle of their friends. Yeah, that's another boundary.
That's a very good boundary. I love this next boundary and how important it is right now in our world, in our social media world. And, I said that and it almost sounded like I didn't like social media, and I should probably clarify immediately because I'm all over it. You can find Chrys and I on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and we hope you do because we love to talk to you. But so there's a place for it, and I love to visit with people on social media, but this is not a place where our children need to be without boundaries. Thank you so much for putting this point in here. I'm going to try to be brief on it and not ramble the rest of our time away because it's a whole show in itself. We need to help them. Even first, they need to be age appropriate. Again, we'll cover this in another show of when they can be on social media. But beyond social media, just their social circles. Our children need boundaries to know how much they can do and where they can go. They don't need to accept every invitation. Maybe that you can see in your child, Chrys, that child is tired. And you help them by saying, no, you're going to need to say no to this activity. And you're helping them with that. So we need to be aware that we can shape their social involvement at this age.
That's right.
And we don't need to abdicate that responsibility.
And you'll never hear us say this in a helicopter parenting type of thing. We are not proponents of that at all, but we can help guide our kids through their social situations. And sometimes our kids are like crawling out for us to do that. I know that I have, I've had some shy kids, shy grandkids. I've had some outgoing ones. It works both ways. I was a very shy child. My mom helped me tremendously. She didn't just lay back and say, oh, she's shy.
Yeah, no.
No, my mom said, you're going to go in and buy the milk. Oh, me? She helped
I
me.
raised each. I remember telling my daughter, and now you would never know this because she's so articulate and the way she handles herself as an adult, but as a little bitty girl, she was very shy. And the way I helped her, Chrys, like we would be walking into church and Philip, her little brother's right behind her, willing to talk to anybody and everybody, and it was very intimidating for Jessica. And so the way I helped her, and this is what we're talking about, you help them on both sides of the spectrum. I would say you don't have to carry on a conversation with Mr. Brown that opens the door, but you have to look him in the eye and you have to respond.
Exactly.
So I expected a certain amount of response from her.
Right.
I didn't expect her to act like Philip. She didn't
Right.
have that. But I expected a certain amount of response from her.
Which is exactly how I did my kids as well. And then the last thing, why I think boundaries are so important, is they help train our children in really every area, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And if we do this in a loving way, as we've been talking about, our kids will learn to think on their own and relate the actions that they do to the consequences that follow, which again is another show. We'll talk about consequences in another show. But our children have to learn that and see that. We have to direct their thoughts in that way. Now, we've also got some aha moments for you to consider in all of this. We've got 5 aha moments. I think we can get them in.
I think we can get them in. The first aha moment is to realize that children who challenge us are really crying out for more limits. A child screaming in Walmart, really, they don't want to act like they're acting. They need someone to take control of the moment.
Exactly.
And help them with their burgeoning emotions. And yes, they're going to need this, that, and the other. Oh, my goodness, we can be susceptible to the same thing. They think they need everything that they see. I wonder where they get that idea. Yep. So we need to be responsible ourselves in our choices, and we need to help them when they're out of control because there's just so much coming at them, and realize they're just not being wild. They need some help.
Right.
Managing their emotions.
And I think these aha moments came to me because I had to have them myself.
Didn't we all?
When my 18-month-old little son, who's second in line, my daughter Corey was first, and like raising a perfect child, and then Ryan, I remember at 18 months, he threw himself on the ground throwing a fit, and I called my mom, like, what is happening? And my mom says, just walk out of the room.
Yeah.
Just don't reward that behavior. So aha moments usually come because we've actually
because you've had an aha moment.
Okay, so number 2 of my aha moments was letting your kids live by their own rules is cruel. It really is, because here is the deal. The real world is not going to let them live by their own rules. It's just not going to. So if we don't teach them how to properly respect boundaries at home, they're going to have a really difficult time accepting them when they're at school or on the playground or anywhere.
Absolutely. So, and boundaries grow with the child. So your child that's in a playpen today doesn't need to be confined to the playpen 5 years from now.
No, in fact, that would be weird.
That would be really bad for that child. So, but what we want to do is realize that those boundaries need to grow gradually. Right. So you don't just, I often thought of it this way when I was raising my children. I didn't want to control my children, because when you take a control off of something that's controlled, it goes wild. What you want to do is discipline and give that child boundaries so that when you're not there, they have the thought process and the decision-making ability to handle a situation. But if you do not allow that to happen by expanding their boundaries and teaching them gradually, they'll never learn those thinking processes.
Exactly. And they don't need to skip steps. I mean, it's like when you see a 4-year-old who has no boundaries and is allowed to go and do and say whatever, there's trouble coming.
You see their future.
Because,
you see that future that's coming.
And then we talked about this a little bit in the first half of it. Boundaries are God's idea. He set boundaries in the Garden of Eden. He had a reason for his boundaries. They were for their protection, and ours as well. I mean, we want our kids to understand that rules that we make, boundaries that we set, however you want to call them, we're not doing that to be mean and ugly. We are doing those to protect them in some way. It's like a covering. When you put a covering over people, it's because I'm trying to take care of you. We ask God to do that with us. We say, cover us with your big hands, protect us. Yeah. So that's what boundaries are. And we start out with our kids young, explaining that to them. They'll get it.
And we never outgrow. that need for those boundaries ourselves. So we want God to establish boundaries in our lives and guide us as we are guiding them. So same, all these same things would apply to us as well. Exactly. So we're going to do that by continually resorting back to Father God in prayer and back to His Word and letting Him establish these boundaries in our life. So Chrys, we have basically taken back the word boundaries today. We're taking it back. Yes. It's a good thing, and we want folks to have boundaries.
We would love for you to subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcast, or subscribe to our email list at christianparenting.org/rockingitgrand so you don't miss any episodes. Oh, and remember, sharing is caring. Don't forget to share this with all your friends. We'll see you next time.